Channel 4 begins its report by focusing on one woman, on her own, probably an artist, making a video walking down the street with a blank paper, which they declare is a sign of rage. But they failed to mention that actually the blank piece of paper emerged on a protest in London where police threatened to arrest a barrister who had a sheet of paper which he was going to fill in with "Not My King" at the time when the Queen's funeral was taking place.
But I said, would you arrest me if I write "Not My King" on here? And he said he probably would.
First, it was all about opposition to China's strict zero-COVID policy. Citizens, millions of them, yearning to escape almost 3 years of intermittent lockdowns.
Escaping intermittent lockdowns for 3 years? In fact, much of China has never been in a lockdown.
No more PCR tests, no more isolation, they shout in Beijing, and freedom! Freedom! We want freedom.
In Britain and Europe, where millions really did protest for freedom and against lockdowns, the mainstream media barely reported these protests, and when they did, described them as anti-vaxxers and anti-science.
The police are outnumbered. They make only the occasional arrest.
How come the police are outnumbered? None of the recent protests were more than a few thousand strong, and the police apparatus is vast.
This was Ed Lawrence, a BBC journalist apprehended in Shanghai, released after only a few hours.
Hey, Barry, call the consulate now.
Instead of listening to their people's protests, the Chinese government has chosen to crack down further, including by assaulting a BBC journalist.
Did the British authorities listen to the protesters in their hundreds of thousands who marched on the streets of London and all around the country against national lockdowns that lasted longer than those in China? Did the British authorities not arrest journalists carrying out their duties of reporting what was happening in Britain?
Basically saying that you want to intimidate me into leaving the area, even though I'm a journalist. What's the arrest for? Why are you arresting me? What's the charge?
You're continuing to commit the offence.
What offence?
Under coronavirus regulations.
I was making a statement.
China's had to lock down repeatedly because its homemade vaccine is not as effective as most of the ones used by the rest of the world.
In fact, China's vaccines have been more widely used than any of the Western vaccines.
But Beijing won't license foreign mRNA vaccines like Pfizer.
Now you can see that this Channel 4 news item is designed to promote one message: China must take Pfizer.
It all amounts to a deadly dose of Chinese vaccine patriotism. And only half of China's 32 million over 8-year-olds have been jabbed.
Although this claim is probably an underestimate, it nevertheless tells you a great deal. How can it be that in an authoritarian dictatorship they did not impose a vaccine mandate?
Rampant COVID is almost certain to overwhelm the health system.
If this is true, why did this not happen in the other countries which took Chinese vaccines? China's vaccine is an inactivated virus, similar to traditional technologies used for vaccination in the past. And many of China's older people do not trust vaccinations in general and prefer to take traditional Chinese medicine composed of herbs, leaves and roots. We should certainly be happy that the people of China have begun to wake up to oppose lockdown measures. But at the same time, we must not fall for the trap of believing the lies told about China in the Western media.